Good to see you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Now, I'd like to welcome Mr. John Hopkins, Managing Director and Chief Executive of the Export Finance Australia. Hello.
Thanks, Senator.
And to your officers. Now, did you have an opening statement this evening?
No, I don't.
Thank you very much. Now, I'll hand the call over to the opposition. Senator Counterman.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just start with asking how many contracts or ships, or however you want to categorise it, has EFA underwritten under the new powers provided by the Parliament in response to the liquid fuel security crisis?
So we've done a total of 17 separate shipments with 6 different companies.
Okay. What are those 6 companies?
So the 6 companies are Viva Energy, Ampol, BP, Freedom Fuels and IOR.
2, 3, 4. I've only got, is that 5 or 6?
That's 5.
5, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I stand corrected, 5.
Only 5 companies, 17 shipments?
We've agreed commercial terms with another senator, so...
Okay. All right. And what time is that up? Is that up to today, basically, is it?
Yes.
When was the first time shipment you underwrote, or is that the right word? Is that how you're describing them?
I think it was, yeah.
Underwritten?
I'll just ask my colleague.
Senator Amanda Copping, Chief Investment Officer, Export Finance Australia. The first trade date that we have was the 16th of April 2026.
Okay, all right. And all of those 17 shipments, have they been fuel as such, or?
Yes, I have been.
Okay, particular diesel or?
Diesel and jet fuel.
Diesel and jet fuel, okay. All right, are there any negotiations occurring for fertiliser? Yeah?
Yes, there are.
Okay. Do you expect to finalise anything soon?
Yeah, we've already finalised agreements with 2 companies and we've done 6 trades with those companies.
Oh, okay, so the 17, that's just fuel?
That's just fuel.
So how many on the fertiliser side?
6 additional. 6 fertiliser trades.
6 fertiliser with, sorry, how many companies?
2 companies.
2. And which were those companies?
CSPB and Incitec Pivot.
Okay. All right, I may as well ask, is there any other products that have been underwritten under this strategic reserve power?
Not at the present time, it's only fuel and fertiliser at the moment.
Okay. Are there plans for anything else at the moment?
Senator, we'll get a direction if there is, but there is scope within our legislation to include other strategic materials.
Remind me, so the fertiliser, did that have to be added? Was that already?
No, that's already in the direction.
That was in the direction, and then there's ability to add more.
Sorry?
There's ability to add more.
Yes, correct.
But at this stage, only
fuel and fertiliser are the 2.
It's described as liquid fuel, is it, or
liquid fuels? And then there's a definition of what that is.
Okay, all right. Okay. Have you consulted with the ACCC about these arrangements and their potential impact on competition?
We have.
All right, okay. And they provided specific advice on each transaction, or is it a generic sort of?
Generic advice.
Okay, all right. Does the minister have to sign off on each of the shipments, or?
The minister's provided a delegation to EFA to sign off on the shipments, but we consult with departments. We consult with DQ and PM&C on the fuel transactions, and we consult with the Minister's Department, DISA, and DAF on the fertiliser shipments.
Okay. So who's the delegate? You are, Mr.
I'm the delegate, yes.
Okay, so you can sign off on any of these. Do you estimate a contractual value for these? How are they actually valued?
The agreements themselves have a maximum contracted value,
right?
And we operate under those limits.
But it is just a contingent liability.
That's a contingent liability. The overall program is a $7.5 billion program, so we're operating within that general cap.
Okay. How much have the value of these contingent liabilities been to date?
Senator, we have an obligation to report on all our transactions, so 8 weeks after they sign. So we're about to announce next week the first of those commercial agreements, and you will see the value of those transactions in those disclosures.
Okay, and will that be on a shipment basis or an agreement basis?
That's on a company basis.
So each one will be disclosed at that time.
Correct.
Evaluation. Okay, within 8 weeks. All right. Okay. Do you have a figure for how much fuel these 17 ships have delivered, or have they all arrived, or are they?
No, we can give you a total. I mean,
Yep.
we've done 690 million litres of diesel and 150 million litres of jet fuel across the 17 shipments. And obviously, I can give you a breakdown if you want to from a state-by-state basis as well. We can do that on notice if you'd like.
Yeah, why not? Let's go for it. I think people will be interested actually in this. Yep.
Okay, we'll do that on notice, or do you want it now?
Oh, let's do it. Well,
New South Wales,
Yep.
200 million litres of diesel. Western Australia, 155 million litres of diesel and 100 million litres of jet fuel. Queensland, 255 million litres of diesel and 50 million litres of jet fuel. Northern Territory, 50 million litres of diesel. Victoria, 120 million litres of diesel, and South Australia, 76 million litres of diesel, and Tasmania, 33 million litres of diesel.
okay, all right. All right, and so over this now getting on to 6 weeks, I suppose, of these shipments, are you noticing an easing of the situation, or you still a need to continue to underwrite, you think, at this stage?
Senator, that's a decision for the policy agencies, but we continue to look for cargoes and continue to transact under the facility.
Right, okay.
For both fuel and fertiliser.
Yep, okay. And you're confident that what you've done is provide additional fuel into Australia relative to just what would have happened anyway?
It's one of the requirements to show additionality, and there are a number of tests that we have in place under the arrangement to ensure that these cargoes are additional cargoes and adding to the supply.
Right, okay. Are other countries doing this as well? Like other governments?
I'm not aware. We've had inquiries from New Zealand as to what we are doing,
right.
But I'm not aware of any other countries that are doing this.
Okay, all right. And these are all through the national account, right?
National interest account,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, so you couldn't do this through the commercial account?
No, we couldn't.
Yeah, okay. That's because they're fossil fuels, or?
Not just fossil fuels, Senator. The risks associated with the transactions are probably beyond our commercial capabilities or commercial appetite.
Right. In terms of, say, a project here that's looking to build a refinery or develop oil for our security, can you support that project?
Not under our commercial account, but possibly under our national interest account. We could.
Why
yes.
can't you do it under the commercial account?
Because we're limited to do non-fossil fuels transactions.
Right. Seems a bit strange in the middle of a fuel crisis. You're not allowed to support. So you're allowed to support foreign oil, but not domestic oil.
Well, we're not allowed to support fossil fuel-related export transactions. So this is a specific mandate that we've been given to finance importing of fuels and fertiliser. So that's what it's limited to.
Yeah, strange that we're not supporting our own production, but we made that point. So just turning to, I'm not sure if these are related, but well, they're probably not because it's 2025. Export Finance Insurance Corporation Regulations 2025. They provided increased upper limits for contingent liabilities. Why did you have to lift those caps?
Senator, finance imposes certain limits on our borrowing capabilities and limits to what we can lend. And given the additional mandates that we've been given over the course of the past sort of 18 to 12 months, we need to lift the amount that we have under those limits, both in terms of borrowing and in terms of our overall lending capacity.
So did you come close to reaching the old limits?
Senator, I think we took the prudent approach to seek higher limits because we might get close and we didn't want to breach those limits or not be able to transact because of those limits. Okay,
so were those limits close to being hit for all types of loans, for guarantees, for insurance and total loans outstanding, or was it a particular?
No, we still had headroom. I think we were being conservative and prudent in asking for those limits, and we had a discussion with finance as to whether it was appropriate, and ultimately it was decided that it was, and so we sought the limits under the appropriate regulations you refer to. Okay.
I believe the explanatory statement for those regulations said the maximum amount of loans under Part 4 not repaid or written off moved from $3 billion to $6 billion. So is that because of just needing that extra headroom, or has there been an increase in bad loans, so to speak, or loans not being repaid?
No, Senator. Touch wood, we don't have any material and bad loans to disclose. Right. But again, it's about being prudent. The amount that we have financed this year will probably hit a record because of the fuel and fertiliser arrangements. So I think it was prudent at the time to get those limits extended. And so this is for the very reason that we went into bat to get those limits raised.
Okay. The statement also provides or notes that regulations provide for the conversion of foreign currency amounts. Are you expecting greater use of non-AUD commitments? Sorry, yep, that's the question.
Senator, we have the need to access US currency from time to time. So we have a borrowing program in US dollars and Australian dollars. So it's important for us to be able to raise money on global markets in US dollars as well.
Has that changed at all, or the exposure to foreign currency needed to change?
Look, the need to have US dollars, given the more that we've done over the past sort of 4 to 5 years, access to US dollars has been important, particularly with our lending in Southeast Asia, which has grown and is often in US dollars.
Okay, all right. What lending are you doing in Southeast Asia?
Senator, we have through the DFAT deal teams and Austrade DFAT and EFA have set up deal teams in Southeast Asia, in Singapore, in Vietnam and in Indonesia, to source more transactions and more investment in that part of the world by Australia. And we have increased our transaction flow in that part of the world to the point where 1 in 4 of our transactions is now in Southeast Asia, and we want to continue to grow those opportunities.
When you say they're in Southeast Asia, what does that mean? Are they from Southeast Asian investors?
So they're EFA investing in Southeast Asian opportunities that have an Australian benefit or have an Australian link, where it either encourages more Australian investment in Southeast Asia, or there are actual tangible or content benefits from us investing.
Exports that we are going to export from it. Okay. These increased limits, do you need to increase your risk appetite for them, or it's just a bigger balance sheet?
Senator, it's a bigger balance sheet. We maintain our strict protocols around risk. We are guided by APRA principles and guidelines, and those have not changed. Okay.
Just going back to the strategic reserve situation, I know this has been done quickly, but have you set up new teams or brought in new expertise to manage these arrangements?
We have, Senator. We actually had a bit of runway because we were preparing for the critical mineral strategic reserve. So we actually had done a bit of work about enhancing the capability and numbers of staff to manage the critical mineral strategic reserve. So we certainly put in place the hiring of new staff under that plan that we had. And in addition, we've brought in external capabilities to help us support on fuel and fertiliser, particularly around calculating limits and amounts, utilisation of fuel and fertiliser indexes, and a lot of the specialist skills that we didn't have internally to be able to manage some of these transactions, particularly given the speed at which we were asked to set them up.
So these are new staff, or have they been contracted out?
No, some new staff and some external consultants, and obviously legal firms, accounting firms and others to help us through the process.
Have you been provided more funding to do this?
Senator, all the transactions under the fuel and fertiliser arrangement is done under the national interest account, and the government effectively carries the cost for national interest account transactions, and therefore we can recover the cost of those additional resources through the national interest account arrangement.
So it just comes out of general revenue, basically, or you?
Well, I mean, the speed at which we're able to set it up, we can utilise our own revenue initially, and then we'll get to an accounting period where we can then, I can ask my CFO to provide you with the details, but basically we just net off costs and income to a total figure, and then determine what amount is moved across into our account if needed at all.
So it's already appropriated, or?
Can I ask my...
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Sonia Camel, Chief Financial and Operating Officer. So what happens with the NIA is that there's obviously profit and loss in that account, and so there's a true-up process that happens.
A what process, sir?
A true-up process. So when we go to, on a financial year basis, if there's a profit that is paid away to government. If it's a loss, then we will ask for that to be, if it's a paper loss, then we don't need to get that money recouped back. If it was a cash loss, hypothetically, then we would get that money appropriated back to us, and that is part of the MyEFO budget process.
All right. So that hasn't had to happen yet for the strategic reserve?
No.
Okay. What about your board? Have you got the same board arrangements?
We do.
For the strategic reserve requirements? Yes. Do you confidently have the expertise on the board to manage the risks here with these new programs?
Very much so, Senator.
In terms of each individual transaction, just take me through what's the due diligence you do for these fertiliser or fuel shipments?
So the first stage is that we set up a master agreement with the relevant company, and we go through our normal due diligence process as we would do with any loan, although obviously at a much faster rate, and that includes, credit due diligence. It includes environmental and social due diligence, know your customer due diligence, and so everything goes through our normal process. Once those master agreements have been executed, then each individual trade is then subject to review, and those arrangements are subject to review by government and to determine that they meet policy guidelines. And then each trade or subsequent trade done under each of those master agreements goes through another approval process to ensure that the trade itself meets the policy requirements of government. So there's a two-stage approach. Master agreement gets signed, but every individual trade gets reviewed as well and goes through a process.
All right. Okay. So you have a risk committee or something like that it goes to?
Yes, it goes through our normal process. It goes through our credit process, our risk. It goes through our risk function, and ultimately it comes to me for review and sign off through our normal process.
Does it have to go through these processes before the minister can agree to it, or his delegate in this case?
Senator, I think it's prudent that we put it through these processes.
No, just how does the law work? Does it have to, or can, under these arrangements, can the minister just say, no, this is happening?
No, Senator, the direction that we have from government indicates the process that which we need to go to government and get approval under the. I know they need to get approval, but the process the government has indicated to you, are you required to do these? I'm required under my own policies internally and through my board to go through these processes. Yes.
But I'm just still trying to get to the bottom of, does it have to happen under law, or are these processes you've set up?
Well,
separate
our legislation requires us to operate on a commercial basis and in a prudent fashion.
Including under the national interest account?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so all the normal laws that would apply to any transaction that we do, I have to adhere to, and I have a requirement under our relevant internal policies and through our board and the delegations that are given to me to comply with those processes.
Okay. How do you cost recover for these loans? These underwriting arrangements?
Senator, as I said, at the end of the year, we'll net off the income and then the costs associated with all our national interest account transactions, and then there'll either be a number, either positive or negative, which we'll either retain for our own account or we'll seek money.
But you're charging, let's say Viva, for example, pays a fee, do they, for these arrangements?
No, they don't. They don't pay a fee.
So how are you making back your costs in initiating the product and your own costs? How do they get recovered?
Senator, it's a risk allocation. So if they lose money in the transaction, we will, through the arrangement, provide the difference or the loss between the purchase price and the sale price. But also, if they make money through the arrangement, we will get part of the upside. Okay,
so it's all through margin, basically, is how you cost recover, and that's factored in then to those margins that you set.
It is. I can
to make effectively.
We're not looking. This is not about making a profit for the organisation.
You're looking to make your costs back, I suppose.
Absolutely. The companies, they charge their. We don't pay the companies legal fees, for example. They provide their own. They provide.
No, but all the costs you're incurring, the law firms, the accounting firms, the due diligence costs associated with the due diligence process you're setting up. Are you designing the contracts in a way that those costs would be recovered in an expected value sense?
I would have to go into, I'd have to get the data, but they're
Okay.
not, that's not the purpose for us to recover those sorts of costs back through the company, but I'll have to get
Okay.
the detail back from you on notice if you'd like.
Right. Okay. All right. Why not? Why wouldn't we typically would cost recover to...
Well, we're asking...
I mean, Viva and these companies are getting a
Senator,
huge benefit.
Well, no, actually, Senator, we're asking the companies to do something that they wouldn't normally do. So part of the consideration here is we're asking the companies to go out and get additional supply over and above what they would normally do. So the fact that they are assisting us through the national interest account secure those additional cargoes is part of the quid pro quo of the arrangement.
Okay, so they're sort of getting a subsidy then?
They're covering any losses that they may incur as a result of entering into these trades, which the government has asked them to do.
So they are getting this benefit, as you say that it's something they wouldn't do, and we've got to give them a corresponding benefit. Have all the major importers of fuel into the country received one of these arrangements?
Senator, no, not all. We work with the departments to determine which companies fit the policy requirements of the program first, and then we will transact with those companies. And obviously, in terms of determining what those companies, which companies they should be, certainly at the beginning, size and scale, distribution networks, ability to store fuel and distribute it quickly was a factor. But again, these are issues that the departments determine in putting forward companies that we enter into negotiations with. I think it would be fair to say there are some companies that were more ready than others to transact, and we obviously dealt with those first. Other companies have, for commercial and other reasons, taken time. And again, we have been vigilant in making sure that we've dealt with those. And again, others have, entered the program discussions and determined not to participate for whatever commercial reasons they have. So it's a variety of factors, but often it's just the practical element of, do they have people available to negotiate? Are they willing to enter the scheme on a commercial basis as well? That determines whether or not we proceed with a particular company or not.
Okay. All right. Maybe that might be it for that one. So I can probably... how many staff are working on the national interest account at the moment?
Oh, Senator, we have 220 odd people in the organisation, and depending on what transactions that we're working on, there's a proportion of those that are working on national interest account transactions. We don't delineate. People will be working on national interest account transactions and commercial account transactions. It would be fair to say, though, given the heightened number of transactions that we've been doing under the fuel and fertiliser agreement, a lot of our staff have been working on that program. But we haven't let up on our other important mandates. And have been transacting in other areas as well. Right.
Oh, actually, that's one thing I was going to ask about. There was some fanfare when this went through that the priority would be delivering fuel in regional areas. How much of that 690 million litres of fuel have gone to regional areas?
I'd have to get you the exact breakdown, but the last cargo we did, 40 million litres, went to regional Queensland.
Right. So is that how you've primarily been delivering the products to regional areas? You actually deliver to a port in a regional area?
Correct, and also transacting with companies that have known regional distribution networks. So IOR and Freedom Fuels were two companies that had well-known regional distribution networks, and therefore transacting with them meant that we got fuel into the regions.
So have the agreements, or any of the agreements, got any conditions that they must supply fuel into?
There's a lot of conditions. There's a lot of conditions in various agreements, but again, when we're approving transactions or the companies put transactions up for approval, often we will require that they be transactions for regional ports or into ports in particular locations. And again, because we're approving each transaction as it goes through, the departments are able to determine.
Right.
That's why I was.
But I would just ask again: has any of the agreements got a specific condition that it must be delivered to a non-capital city customer?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. All right. With the broader shift to these critical minerals, the strategic reserve, I mean, is there a risk here that your work's shifting away from private exporters and towards the priorities of the government?
Look, Senator, I'm very confident that we can fulfil both our obligations. I think this year we've had a very successful year on our commercial account, and look forward to sharing our results with you at the next Senate estimates hearing. So for me, I also think that the speed of delivery at which we had to deliver the fuel and fertiliser security agreement has showed us some efficiencies in the organisation that we hope to take advantage of for the critical mineral strategic reserve. And also a number of, the product that we've been using, the contract for difference, is a relatively novel concept. It certainly was for us, and we've actually proved that up now. And again, that will have value for the critical mineral strategic reserve as well. So that I actually think has been quite positive.
Okay. You mentioned you've employed more staff. How many staff have you increased the organisation by since the strategic reserve?
Senator, there's probably about 10 that have come on already. And look, we're probably looking overall about 30, I think is probably the call in terms of what we see as the additionality to our staff. But I don't just see this as a addition of people. Again, it's using specialists where we need to use them, and also technology and efficiency is an important element to how we operate.
Okay. There might be some more detailed information available.
Maybe get some correct numbers.
Yeah.
So no, okay.
No, there's not. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, Senator, I was just going to sort of clarify. So yes, as Mr Hopkins has said, it's approximately sort of between 20 and 30, I think probably all up. We're in the process, as he mentioned earlier, we're already in the process of starting to recruit additional people for the critical minerals strategic reserve. We're doing it carefully and methodically because this is about getting the people with the right skills. It's not huge numbers. So his point sort of between 20 and 30, and at the moment we've recruited about 5 additional people over the last couple of months since this process began. Okay,
all right. Do you track how much of your transactions are going to small and medium enterprises?
We do, yes.
Okay, how do you report that? Or
those numbers, I've got a Chief Investment Officer who looks after our small and medium business enterprise function here. But the majority of our transactions, over 90%, are to small and medium businesses. It's a very important part of our mandate. And again, we've been fielding inquiries in relation to the fuel and fertiliser issue from small and medium-sized businesses. And again, dealing with those companies directly, but also referring them on to other CIV partners like the National Reconstruction Fund, where they might have a better option to be able to help rather than us. So this hasn't just been something that has been focused on the larger end of town or just fuel and fertiliser, distributors or companies. It's involved a lot of inquiries from the whole part, different parts of the Australian economy impacted by this crisis.
Okay, all right. So have they been going up or down or staying about stable, the proportion going to the proportion of your
our numbers
business
in
going
SMEs is about stable, generally over about 200 companies. Oh, is it? Can I just get the numbers? Can I just ask?
Okay.
Just get some correct numbers for you, Senator.
Thanks for the question, Senator. Richard Coath, Chief Investment Officer of Business Financing at EFA. I'm responsible for the small business and mid-market business, so everything outside of the institutional business at Export Finance Australia. We've been very focused on the core business around delivery for SME outside of fuel and fertiliser, other than triaging some of those customers that the CEO referred to earlier. In terms of customer numbers, there's been modest growth in the SME sector over the last 12 months, and in terms of volume or facility value, if you like, that'll be higher than it was last year. So modest increase in customer numbers. and a modest increase in facility value in terms of exposure. And in the mid-market business, customer numbers are about the same, but volume in terms of transaction flow that we supported will be modestly up on last year.
Okay, all right. I might just turn to the transaction register then. So can I confirm the registers, the current register from July to May, I think that's what we've got, as 482 transactions with $2.6 billion in total finance. Is that right?
Correct.
Does that include these, the fertiliser, the strategic reserve?
Not yet.
Not yet. So it's the 8-week delay.
Yeah, the next round of that will
Okay.
include some of those transactions.
All right. Okay. Does that register track these SME issue that I mentioned, or is
Yes.
it will? Okay. Right. I mean, I've got here, you said 90% before, but I've got, someone's told me here that the commercial account institutional finance is more than 7 times larger than the SME transaction total in the register.
Obviously, the institutional business is dealing in multiple of millions of dollars of transactions in value. Our SME transactions could be as low as $100,000. So it tracks high in customer numbers, but low in value.
So that 90% figure is
number of
volume
customers.
or numbers of customers.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So what's the proportion in terms of value for SMEs?
I don't have the exact proportion, but we can get that for you on notice.
Okay. All right. Do you track how many of those transactions directly support Australian exporters?
It's all to support Australian export. It's all to support, well, certainly in the SME business, it's all to support Australian exporters. In the institutional business, our mandates are different, and we'll be supporting either Australian benefit or Australian content into projects. So it's slightly different.
Well, I suppose that's my question. Do you track that at all?
Yes, we do.
Okay. What proportion is that at the moment?
I don't have that number for you, but we could work that out and provide that information for you.
All right. Okay. Given that the new strategic reserve account does open up this ability to support fossil fuel projects, have you been provided any advice about how you might do that in a way that maintains the government's emissions reduction goals?
Senator, these are on the national interest account.
Yep.
So in terms of the national interest account, we do what we're directed to do. And so we have emissions reporting requirements, which these transactions will factor into. Again, I can provide you with some detail about those, or we can provide that to you on notice if you want that information.
But just particularly as given, now underwriting, we were trying to ban fossil fuels not that long ago, now we're underwriting their importation. Is there any kind of...
It will have an impact. It'll have an impact.
No, I know that, but my question is the government giving you any direction about how to manage these transactions from an emissions perspective?
We'll report as we normally would under the legislative requirements.
Okay. So the statement of expectations hasn't been updated since...
No, it hasn't.
This strategic reserve situation. Right. Does the statement of expectations include requirements on you to try and reach net zero or reduce emissions?
Yes. There's a compliance to the Paris climate requirements, yes.
In the statement of expectations?
In the statement of...
Is that in your Act now too?
It is, yes.
Yes, because we changed all these Acts, didn't we?
It is.
Yeah, okay. So how does importing 690 million litres of liquid fuels, how is that consistent with your Act then that requires compliance with Paris and net zero?
Well, Senator, we will do our reporting as we are required to do, and the overall Paris commitment is a government commitment. It's not an EFA commitment, so it may impact the government's requirements, but certainly we will just report what our contribution is, and the government has the overall responsibility for the Paris climate commitments, not EFA.
But it's in your Act.
It is.
So you presumably have to act within your Act.
Where we have control, we can act within our Act, but where we are directed to do something under other parts of the legislation, we will comply with those parts of the legislation.
the commitment to the Paris Agreement in your Act, does it only apply to the commercial account?
To our commercial account.
Doesn't apply to the national interest account?
Well, I'd have to take advice.
True.
I'd have to take advice. I'd have to take advice.
Well, that's a good
on
question.
But look,
Have you sought any advice?
Again, our transactions go through our normal environmental social due diligence. Part of that includes, and I can get some detail for you, Mr. Pacey can provide some detail on how we actually track emissions for particular transactions. Can I ask him to contribute?
Go for it.
John Pacey, Chief Credit Officer. As part of our due diligence, we require all customers to comply with Australian regulations, and that would include the in relation to emissions reporting. So an Australian company which is operating in accordance with Australian laws would comply with our environmental standards.
Right. So in the case of these, let's say, Ampol, have they had to fill out some sort of emissions reporting information to get this underwriting of their shipments?
Ampol has their own reporting obligations to the government, which our facility would require.
But you haven't sought information from them prior to underwriting these shipments about the emissions involved with the shipment or their broader policies on net zero, etc.
We've relied on their public reporting in terms of emissions, and under our documentation, we also require emissions reporting.
So when someone applies through the commercial account, do they have to report the emissions of their project?
Only larger companies have to report emissions.
This is to you I'm talking about. No. We require projects to report their emissions, larger projects, but we wouldn't require an SME to report emissions. Okay, so say before the Secretary mentioned like a $100,000 project, that won't have to report to you before accessing a loan or a facility, its emissions.
That's correct. When we calculate our own emissions, we would make an estimation of the emissions of that SME exporter.
Right. So what's your threshold then? How much? Is it transaction value? Is it an amount of emissions before you require specific emissions reporting from a project?
Well, we operate in accordance with international protocols, including the OECD Common Approaches, and they provide benchmarks in relation to when companies should report emissions. And we adhere to those. I'm
just trying to understand, what are those for you though? Like, if I'm a customer coming forward, at what point will you decide, yep, you need to start telling me your scope 1, 2, maybe 3 emissions from this project?
It would only apply to projects in accordance with what's known as the IFC performance standards, which we would apply. Larger companies in Australia who have public reporting requirements under, NGERS, we wouldn't duplicate those requirements.
It's only for those companies that have greenhouse gas reporting obligations.
Over thresholds which I can take on notice.
Okay, maybe take those on notice, because I'm mindful even back when. And do you still do work for the NAIF? Are you still doing the back office for the NAIF?
No, we're not.
Oh, you don't do that anymore?
No, I think that's...
They do it themselves?
We may still do payroll, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
Yeah, so
Right.
for NAIF, most of their services have transitioned. There is just a little bit left in that transition, but with the view that they fully transition away from EFA.
Okay. Well, when I was Minister, you guys did it. And yeah, I had relatively small companies pulling their hair out, having to do, all sorts of climate change statements and, paperwork, red tape. It made no sense to them and nor to me. But so I'm just trying to wonder what sort of, particularly since that time, you've had these, and it is, I've checked your Act, it's in the functions of EFIC, that you have to encourage and facilitate activities that support the net zero transformation. So I'm just trying to get a handle on what that red tape burden is for people who apply to you.
There is not a significant red tape burden, Senator.
Wasn't the feedback I received.
Companies.
Yep. But it doesn't sound like there's anything when the government needs fuel desperately for its political purposes. That's all waived. I'm just wondering then, going back to that, given this net zero commitment is in the functions, this is section 7, functions of EFIC, and it says to encourage and facilitate activities that support the net zero transformation. Have you received any legal advice on how the Strategic Reserve National Interest account that is underwriting and financing dirty oil, how is that consistent with that function? Have you sought any legal advice about that?
I'm not sure that we've sought any specific legal advice as we've gone through this process, no, Senator.
Right. Okay. So what's the point of that part of your act?
Senator,
why did we go through this?
As my colleague has pointed out, we go through a process of determining what the environmental and social impacts are of the projects that we finance, and that is reported, and that gives the government a sense of whether or not we are meeting our requirements. It gives us a sense of whether we're meeting our requirements as well.
Yeah,
But
it just seems strange.
we are not responsible for the overall target. We are one of the parts of government that contributes to the overall assessment of whether or not the government's meeting that target or not.
I think it's what frustrates people, because the government's got a priority here, obviously, to not leave our country without oil and gas. It'd be very embarrassing for them. So they just waive, they just don't even, just ignore the very provisions they impose on the rest of the community and business sector. I mean, it's just increases frustration among the Australian community when they see a government deciding what rules they do and don't follow. They don't get the same flexibility for businesses. So it seems very strange that, as I say, we impose these obligations on business, but your agency just okay, we can just ignore that section of our act.
Senator, as I said, we don't ignore it, and we go through the normal processes to assess what the impact of transactions are, and we will report that through the normal legal channels for government to assess more broadly.
Okay. Just turning back to the Southeast Asia situation, I've got here that in 24-25 you provided $529 million in finance through to Southeast Asia. Did any of that support gas related to energy security?
No.
Okay. Did any support renewable energy, clean energy?
Yes.
Okay. How much of the $529 million was
I'd
to
have
that?
to get you an exact breakdown, but certainly there were some transactions that fall clearly into that space.
All right. If you could take on notice that. Is there a restriction on you providing any finance to gas?
Yes, there is. But there's an overall restriction on us providing any.
Oh, that goes back to that other one.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I mean, it's a bit strange because we're using our gas exports to these very countries as leverage to get liquid fuels.
But
we can't.
That's to our commercial account, Senator. As
Right.
you've seen with the fuel and fertiliser agreement, under the national interest account, we can support fossil fuel transactions.
Yeah, I know, but that's one aspect of what we're doing. And maybe it's a question more to the government, not to you. But you know, the other way we've been successful in maintaining flows of liquid fuels is because we do export large amounts of gas and coal to the very people that provide us other types of fossil fuels, liquid fuels. But your organisation's actually restricted from supporting one side of those flows, the flows of exports of coal and gas to those customers.
Senator, that's one way to characterise it. Another way is to note that our activity in Southeast Asia and in engaging with Southeast Asia and providing finance to Southeast Asia has enhanced our relationships with those countries, which has allowed them to supply the fuel under the current arrangement.
Right. So how far does this restriction go? If someone was producing pipes here in Australia, or making pipes that they supplied to a gas pipeline project in Southeast Asia, could they get finance?
Senator, that's a speculative opportunity. We look at all those transactions where it is not a direct financing of fossil fuels on a case-by-case basis, because there are some cases where we are comfortable in providing finance, depending on what the end use is of the particular product. So, I mean, So again, on a case-by-case basis for transactions that may not directly be in the fossil fuel sector. So I can't give you a black and white answer on these transactions, because we do go into some detail in terms of considering these transactions before saying no.
Have you provided any advice to the market about this? Is there some kind of fact sheet about exactly where the boundaries of this fossil fuel restriction?
We're having constant conversations with customers when they approach us for finance around what our mandate includes and what it doesn't include. So we're actively engaged in the market in discussions, particularly in Western Australia and Queensland, and states that have a large resources sector.
Because one of our big exports is mining services. A lot of that potentially will be in coal, particularly in countries like Indonesia, India, etc. So are you restricted from even like a truck company providing trucks or
Again, that's a perfect example of transport. Right. We would consider that on a case-by-case basis.
But potentially just supplying trucks to a coal mine somewhere in Southeast Asia is restricted.
Often those companies may not be exclusively providing trucks to fossil fuels projects. It might be providing part of its business to other resources sector industries, and that would allow us to finance that portion of their business.
So if they were exclusive, that was their whole bit. And I know businesses who do this. I know that they only do coal. So if they were exclusively just doing coal, they're out.
Again, case-by-case basis. I wouldn't say, I don't like saying no immediately. I like to consider whether or not these are companies that we can support.
So how many projects has EFA rejected because they've fallen foul of the fossil fuel restriction in the commercial account?
Senator, we don't reject transactions just for one particular reason. There's normally a number of different reasons that transactions aren't suitable for our financing, including that they may already get finance from the private sector. We're a market gap financier, so we are not the sole point of finance for a company. So there's lots of different options, including further equity injections, private finance, or other financiers or other finance tools, not just EFA.
Okay. Have you actually received legal advice about these boundaries? Senator,
for transactions where we seek some clarity on what our mandate is, we'll go and seek legal advice. Yes, we will.
But specifically, have you sought legal advice about the boundaries of the fossil fuel restriction?
Yes, we have. We
sought broad
when the limitation was brought in. We sought some broad legal advice about where its application would apply and where it would not apply.
Right. Okay. It sounds very complicated. Have you done anything in hydrogen?
We've had some discussions with companies at an early stage. I can ask my Chief Investment Officer.
Senator, we have had a number of conversations. In some instances, we have provided support letters. However, no, we have not, consistent with that, as you'll see in our transaction register, financed hydrogen to date.
And again, coming back to the former discussion, if a hydrogen project was using brown coal or gas as a feedstock to produce hydrogen, that'd be out?
Not necessarily,
okay.
Senator.
Okay. Just checking, I had some questions about $120 million worth of support to Vulcan Energy's Phase 1 Lionheart project in Germany. What sort of support was provided to that project?
A loan.
A loan to that project? And that was $120 million?
Correct.
Let me check the numbers.
That sounds about right.
Yes, so, sorry, 120 million euro, Senator, $196 million Aussie.
Okay. There's been some reporting on a website called Clean Energy Wire that citizens living in the prospective lithium mining areas of this project, and I'm quoting, oppose the project over fears that it might lead to small earthquakes that can damage buildings. Have you at all investigated these issues?
I can ask my Chief Credit Officer to respond to that.
Senator, as part of the due diligence, we we benchmark the project against the IFC performance standards, and one of the risks which was considered related to, I believe that was one of the risks which was assessed.
Okay, by yourselves?
Well, no, Senator. This is a project with many lenders in it, and there's an independent technical advisor would work for the banks.
Sorry. Okay, so what steps were put in place to mitigate these risks?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator.
Okay. Were there any risks to groundwater?
To groundwater?
Yeah, from the project.
It is a risk to be managed, Senator. It is a hydrology project, so yes.
Okay. What about more broadly biodiversity?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator.
Right. Okay, all right. Well,
biodiversity was certainly one of the issues we benchmarked the project
has the loan been drawn down?
Senator, we typically, mindful of confidentiality requirements, and we don't, advise on drawdowns of transactions in our portfolio.
Oh, okay. That was different from NAIF. Okay. Well, has the project begun?
They've announced that the project has reached both contractual and financial close.
Right.
So you would expect that, yes, they have started, Senator.
They've started. Okay. All right. I thought my colleague might want to ask the next ones. Yes, he's going to. Senator Cadell.
The government's $175 million investment in IFM Investors, the debt fund. Can we talk about that for a bit? I sort of got a self-interest here. I work for Port of Newcastle, and New South Wales Ports was owned by IFM Investors there, so crossing that. So that's owned by a whole lot of Australian super funds, is it not?
Correct.
So what was the nature of the investment?
I can ask my colleague to discuss it, but effectively you hit the nail on the head. It was an investment that brought the Australian super funds into investments in Southeast Asia. So that was the primary the primary benefit that we saw of the project. But we're going to ask my colleague to...
So Senator, that is us investing equity on the national interest account into that...
So it was national interest, not commercial.
Correct, national interest account into that credit fund to crowd in additional Australian investment into the region.
Why was there a finance gap? Historically, it's a strange investment for me because in my dealings with them, they were bigger than Gozundis. They had more money than they could ever poke a stick at. They were always looking. Why was government investment needed in this regard?
Yes. So Senator, this is part of IFM's expansion into Southeast Asia, and in that transaction, the investment, we are playing a demonstration and crowding in role that will enable IFM to build pipeline and demonstrate their capacity to their investors and their experience and knowledge of understanding in the Asian market. So they've asked us to invest with them so that they can build that pipeline and demonstrate to then crowd in additional Australian investment from the super funds into that credit fund.
My knowledge at the time, I don't know now, but they had over $250 billion themselves. It seems odd. Was it more that they wanted government involvement to show goodwill? It seems a small amount when they've got $250 billion. They've got $250 billion.
I mean, essentially, Senator, the Southeast Asia Economic Strategy that the government launched last term, I should say, identified it as a strategic weakness for Australia, that we're underinvested and not engaged deeply in terms of our investment community in particular in the region, but also into our trading relationships. Building that investment capability has involved deal teams been established in key Southeast Asian financial and investment centres. I think they're called business champions from the Australian corporate sector, appointed in every ASEAN economy, and a very large effort to engage our investment community, not just the industry super capability, but our broader private capability as well in this kind of activity. And it's this investment is consistent with that. It's building confidence and capability at being able to do all of the things that in many cases take many years for firms to get the confidence to be able to invest in particular propositions in Jakarta or Manila or Ho Chi Minh City.
It came from the National Interest Council. That was direction of government, this investment?
Correct.
Right. Did they apply under the commercial account prior?
No, Senator, because at that point in time, we didn't have the powers to provide equity on the commercial account.
Right. So it's not a loan, it's an equity.
It's an equity investment.
So
yes.
On a single project, it is not on overall in IFM, it's not going into their funds base, it's just on a single project they're doing?
No, it's into their credit fund, which will then provide finance across multiple projects.
Okay. Was there specific links to Australian exporters that would be involved in these projects, or it was just an overall umbrella?
It's expanding the overseas financing and investing of IFM and then the super funds as part of the mandate.
And as the Minister said too, Senator, the fact that the deal teams are in place in Southeast Asia, made up of Austrade and DFAT, they monitor those projects and look for opportunities for Australian business to leverage off those investments. So it's not just set and forget. Once the investment has been made, our colleagues from Austrade and DFAT and others work to ensure that Australian involvement continues in the investment itself, but also in the underlying investments made by the fund.
We talk about projects as a multiple. Was there a bundle of projects that was specified, or it was open-ended to?
Typically, each of these centres has a pipeline of projects at various stages of viability, and I assume it's consistent with that. And it's very unlikely that this would be the only source of capital for each of those projects. There's an effort to
when you've got $250 billion, I don't think 175 is going to touch.
Well, but it is in Australia's interest that capital be engaged in the way that is consistent with the Southeast Asia economic strategy. That is the
and I get
that is the national interest calculation here. Yes,
that's not the bit that raises my inquiry into this. It seems a small amount for a big capital fund to take an equity position that it wouldn't make a significant difference.
It's encouraged them to do it.
And Senator, you raised the issue earlier about having the Australian government investing alongside you. It makes a huge impact in terms of Southeast Asia, in terms of how the market perceives that investment.
There was an article I read earlier, actually in the dinner break, that's talking about industry super funds losing 17% to self-managed super funds in the last 12 months. Was there any concerns that they might have a lot of balance sheet money? Was there a liquidity problem or anything like this that needed us to get involved?
I think that question is probably outside the scope of this committee, but as I understand it, relates to as a set of challenges that go to the age profile moving through in superannuation. So what people are doing is moving out of their accumulation accounts into essentially either pension accounts or however they're managing it. So there is a bit of lumpiness to that. It's got very little to do with what's going on the investment side.
Okay. So we said we've assumed there was a bundle of projects in the pipeline. As part of the application, were you made aware of the pipeline of projects that are interested in?
Senator, we're responsible for pulling together some of that pipeline in the deal team's arena.
Right. Are any at FID yet?
The investments are various stages of development.
Are any at FID yet?
Senator. So some of the, we can provide additional information, but obviously that information sits
commercially confident, yeah.
within the fund, and the investment is into the fund rather than into the project by project. So it's amassed over time.
Into the fund, so we wouldn't normally, the government would normally get dividends, management. Are there any other fees that we're collecting as part of this? Is it normally just part of a dividend, normal return, like a normal investor?
Normal return, and we are investing on a commercial basis, like the other investors into that fund, Senator.
And what's the withdrawal capability of it? Is it on notice? Is it a period of time? Is it?
Senator, I'll have to take advice on, obviously there are various confidentiality requirements in relation to, as you would expect, that obviously impact others in the fund as well. So I'll have to take that response on notice.
Is this the only example of a similar type investment under the national account of Australian businesses or super funds or other investment funds going into the region, or is there other ones like it?
Senator, it has been announced that we're also investing into the plenary PPP fund, which is focused on Southeast Asia as well, and that is encouraging the export of the capability that Australia has in PPPs to undertake. Yeah, on the national interest account as well, into Southeast Asia.
Have you announced the amount?
Yes, $50 million US, Senator.
Okay, but do we? I know you don't. You're working with the deal teams. I get this. I'm just trying to understand. Your deal teams, would they have a focus on trying to incorporate Australian businesses into these projects? That is part of what they're doing?
Yes, that's part of it because it creates opportunities. So in the case of plenary, they're bidding on PPP projects, including hospitals and transport projects. And as part of those bidding consortia, they are including Australian companies.
What about? I get the plenary one, but what about the IFM one?
The IFM one, as Mr Hopkins mentioned, it's part of the ongoing role of deal teams, including DFAT and Austrade, to actively encourage and look for opportunities with IFM for those investments.
That's the words I hear, that we're actively looking for opportunities there. Will they be trying to incorporate Australian businesses into those deal teams when they come?
Yes, Senator.
That's what I want to hear. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've still got some more. I know you're loving it. Just got some questions about Psi Quantum. Have Psi Quantum been provided support through the national interest account?
Yes, they have.
Okay. How much is the value of that support?
I think it's totalling around $465 odd million, made up of equity and debt.
Okay. And so how much is debt and how much is equity?
So it's 125 million US in equity, and the remainder in debt. $275
million Aussie debt.
Okay. And how much has been drawn down?
Senator, we've made the $125 million equity investment.
Right.
And the loan is yet to be drawn down.
Okay. I've got a quote here from your budget paper, well, I'm not sure if it's budget paper number 1 or your budget paper. It says the value of outstanding loans estimated to be 183.6, with further loan funding of 275 still to be drawn down. So does that mean none of it's drawn down?
So, Senator, what that might be referring to is the equity investment is in the form of a convertible note.
Okay, right. Okay. Okay. What's the interest rate on the loan?
The interest rate on the convertible note is 5.12%.
Right.
Then the interest rate on the loan is BBSY plus 4.8%, Senator.
Okay. And what's the term, loan terms?
So I'm not sure that...
On maturity?
We're under... This is a transaction that's got quite tight confidentiality
Okay, well,
requirements,
if you
Senator.
could
We might have to take that on notice around what we can say in relation.
We've made some disclosures
Which is-
already,
yeah.
and we
Okay.
might just reflect on those, Senator.
Okay. All right. So if the loans if the loans fail, does that come onto the national interest account, or is it direct onto the Commonwealth balance sheet?
This is the national interest account.
National interest. Okay. All right. Are there any milestones in the agreement?
There are, yes.
Okay. Just going back to the start of this, I'm asked questions on this way back, but not many. Who first approached Export Finance Australia about funding PsyQuantum?
My understanding was the DQ department. Sorry,
department
DISA.
DISA did.
Yeah.
The department. Okay. So when was that? When did that first happen? Any associated parties, consultants or lobbyists between them, all those entities, and yourselves and the then Minister between the 1st of June 2022 and the 30th of April 2024?
So could you just clarify that again?
Okay, I'm happy to. She'll be on the record for you. I'm asking for it on notice.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
not expecting you to do it right now,
Yeah.
but the correspondence between PsyQuantum, associated parties such as consultants or lobbyists, and yourselves, Export Finance Australia, and or the Minister, between 1st of June 2022 and the 30th of April 2024, but that'll be all on Hansard, I'm sure. Did Export Finance Australia have any involvement in meetings between ministers and PsyQuantum in the United States, particularly in California in January 2023?
No.
Okay. What about any other meetings between the Minister and yourselves and PsyQuantum? Have you ever been involved in that?
No. Well,
Okay.
Senator, I can speak for myself and my executive team.
Maybe take that on notice
We'll
then
check
for
for
the
you, but
rest.
certainly not at a senior level.
Okay. Do you yourselves meet with PsyQuantum on a regular basis?
We
now
do.
they're
We
a
met with
customer?
the interim CEO a few weeks ago. He was
Okay.
out in Australia.
Do you have regular planned meetings, or
Yes, we do.
How regular are they?
Look, the team meets on a regular basis to discuss the transaction. I'd have to get you the frequency
Okay.
of that, but it's on either a regular or an ad hoc basis as needed.
All right.
As we would do for
Any
any
transaction,
transaction that we've got an exposure to.
So I believe PsyQuantum began construction on a Chicago facility they're building in September last year. Is any of our finance going towards that?
Senator, at the moment, the investment's at the corporate level, so we've invested equity at a corporate level, so it's not directly invested
Yep.
into that.
But money's
Chicago.
fungible too, though. So
I
yes,
understand,
yeah.
but
Okay.
I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any? Are they making any progress on the Brisbane Airport site they were meant to build?
Senator,
on?
they've moved,
Oh, okay.
transferred the site to another more suitable site.
In Brisbane, or
Yes, Senator, in Moreton Bay.
Moreton Bay.
okay, all right. Have they bought that land, or
They're in the process of securing that site.
okay? Do we know when they expect to start the Brisbane project?
The company has agreed to meet certain milestones. Those milestones are set out, and we are following those. And we will continue to work with the company and disperse funds once the company meets those milestones.
Okay. So why have we given the money up front then, if they haven't really done anything in Australia?
Well, the Chicago site's a precursor to the Brisbane site. So
Right.
the Chicago site is designed to test the equipment effectively for the full operating computer in Brisbane. And we got details of that from the interim CEO a few weeks ago. So part of building the Brisbane site is to test equipment in Chicago in order to have Australia's first fault-tolerant quantum computer set up in
Right.
Brisbane.
So with this change of site, is that changing the timelines here for delivery of a quantum computer here?
The company have continued to stick to their existing timelines, and my understanding is by 2027 they want to have an operational site. That doesn't necessarily mean a full computer, but they've stuck to that timeline. And then
End of 27.
they've indicated, sorry,
End of 27.
end of 27,
Okay.
sorry. So those timings have not changed.
Okay, all right. Have they met all milestones to date? I suppose, are the milestones time related, or
again, we don't want to give too much away in relation to they've satisfied all the requirements that we have had of them to date.
Okay, all right. All right, thanks for that. We've got some on notice there. We'll come back to it. I'm just turning now to a loan to the Power Finance Corporation, India. It's described in the register as other electricity generation. Can I just check what exact forms of electricity generation that is?
Senator, we can provide a more detailed breakdown, but effectively it's renewable power generation in India.
In India?
Yes,
that's correct. Is it solar, wind, or?
Yes, it's multiple sources,
okay.
but we're happy to provide a breakdown.
What's the Australian component of that?
So that finance is provided under our Indo-Pacific infrastructure mandate, Senator, and so the Australian benefit that comes from that transaction includes obviously future opportunities for Australian companies in India. That loan itself is to an Indian government-owned SOE, Power and Finance Corporation, closer relationships with both India and that company, and future opportunities for Australian businesses.
So presumably we don't make solar panels and the like, so what exactly is the Australian benefit?
Senator, often the benefit of these transactions includes, Australian direct participation, but also strategic benefit. It's challenging to transact in India, and we need to show Australian companies that there are opportunities in India, and EFA is often a pathway investor and plays a demonstration role. That's part of our function.
Just trying to find, we're financing energy production in India that doesn't involve the manufacture of any, well, not that you've been able to identify any Australian goods. What's the point of that? That seems very strange.
Again, we're looking for pathways for Australian companies to participate in these investments. One of the best pathways is to be an investor in projects that may provide opportunities for Australian companies to participate. Again, we're doing this alongside our colleagues in Austrade, who are active in the Indian market to support Australian businesses, and having this investment provides an opportunity and a pathway for them to find opportunities in the Indian market in the renewable space.
So who owns Power Finance Corporation India?
So ultimately it's the government of India.
Hang on. So who's the Australian involved in this transaction? Is there an Australian involved?
There's no direct.
We're financing an Indian government.
Export Finance Australia is involved.
Okay, yeah, the Australian government is. Yes. Yeah, I know that. Australian taxpayers on the hook. But hang on, I'm just trying to get my head around this. We are funding an Indian government corporation to make electricity in India from non-Australian products. I'm struggling to understand the benefit to our country of this transaction.
Well, Senator, it's an investment. We get a return on that investment, and so it's not money out the door. It's an investment.
But we could do that. We could invest in property in New York, and we'd have the same thing. Could you do that under your? But Senator, we
have a direct mandate to support transactions in the Indo-Pacific region. India is clearly in that region. They're a Quad partner. They're an important ally. And, for us to demonstrate our commitment to India and the region, this is a good example to do that in what is sometimes a very challenging market.
But go back to my point, if I own a mining services business, say maintains and services trucks or something, many of these businesses in Mackay, say Paget, industrial zone of Mackay, and they want to go and help Coal India maintain their truck fleet, they're locked out. They can't get a loan from you.
Senator, it doesn't mean they can't get a loan. It just means EFA might not be the right financier for them.
Yeah, but you can finance the Indian government just because it's solar panels, then it's all cool. But if it's an Australian company servicing mining trucks because it's in coal, they're locked out. It seems surreal. Okay, all right. Look, I think that's it for me, but thank you. You've been very helpful, and you're right across your brief. I'll give you that. It's not your fault that you've been given bizarre outcomes and objectives which seem totally at odds with our national interest. But thank you for your evidence tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator. Okay, on that note, thank you very much, Mr Hopkins and your team. We'll just suspend briefly, but just so everyone knows, we'll now have Tourism Australia come to the table. Thank you. I'd now welcome Mr Robert Mack, Managing Director of Tourism Australia and officers of the agency. Good evening.
Good evening.
Did you have an opening statement for the committee tonight?
I do, Senator, and I'm happy to table it if you'd prefer.
That would be excellent if you wouldn't mind tabling. We'll get a copy circulated to the team. Now, I'm happy to hand over the call. Senator Canavan, I'll kick off with you.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking your expenses, your total expenses, seems like they've reduced by around 50 million to 28-29. Is that correct?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, in terms of our budget appropriation, in terms of where we're at over the forward estimates, we have 40 million over to 28-29. That includes 5.1 million for this financial year. And then the latest MyEFO supporting the overall government reductions was 15.9 million. So that's a total across those 5 years of 55.9 million.
Okay. The PBS says this reduction reflects a government decision to introduce further savings. What savings have been achieved?
So for us, Senator, obviously looking year by year in terms of those savings, we then reduce certain activity to be able to accommodate those savings and look to minimise that in terms of the impact of our role and our purpose, which is to drive a sustainable tourism industry. So everything we do have to spend, we spend to the maximum support of our industry around the whole of Australia.
Okay, all right. Your total net resourcing falls by 10.9 million in 26-27. Why is that? And what's the cuts there?
In terms of our reduction for 26-27, it's 11.7 million. So that gives us a budget of 161.1. We do also generate revenue as well from various sources. So we have approximately 20 million in direct revenue support that we get as an agency.
All right. So are any particular services being stopped by this reduction?
Look,
campaigns or the like?
When we get these reductions, obviously difficult decisions have to be made in terms of what we pause. We look first at what we can do to control, to reduce our controllable costs. So we're taking reductions in terms of our travel costs that we allocate and put that through and have done that this year, and we'll do it again next financial year. And if indeed we did it the year before that as well. But then we're looking at activities. And when we look at and make these decisions, because we're in 16 markets around the world, solely focused on international tourism, and the reason being that the focus of those international travellers will travel differently to domestic tourists. They will stay midweek, they will disperse widely, and we focus on high-yielding travellers. But those 16 markets are a very diverse portfolio of markets for reasons that we very pick from data-led decisions informing our strategy. And in terms of activity, when we've had to make those reductions, we look at what is going to give maximum benefit to our industry across the whole of Australia. So some of those reductions that we're making into next financial year, and our team, we're planning 18 months ahead. So we're planning our annual operating plan, which will be approved by our board in June to start in July. So some of the reductions we've had to make in terms of the Italian market, which is a lot fewer visitors overall, for example, than somewhere like the US or China. So we've reduced some of the activity that we've got there and in some other markets, and really trying to maintain those higher volume markets that, as I say, can disperse widely across Australia and probably more in volume terms. But as I said, Senator, everything we do spend, we look at how we can maximise what we do. So across all those 16 markets, as an example, we invest in training travel agents around the world for our Aussie Specialist program. That's something that we maintain, and it gives us a channel of activity that we can promote to educate and help convert even more of those holidays, no matter what our level of investment is overall in those markets. It's a nice one to drive conversion, which is part of our reason for being.
How many markets did you say you're in?
16.
16?
Yes.
16. Are you expecting to have to cut any completely, or is it just reducing?
At this stage, it's a reduction of activity in some of the markets. One of the ones that we've reduced is New Zealand, but for us, it's very much heavy lifting done by our states and territory tourism organisations. So we have a lighter touch in that market, and that's okay in terms of our strategy. But at this stage, yes, maintaining those 16. We also have platforms that serve markets beyond those. Primarily the Aussie Specialist program I mentioned, that's got 40,000 agents qualified around the world. That's actually in over 100 countries around the world. We also have a big distribution platform called Australia Tourism Exchange that we host every year. It's the biggest for the Australian industry, has 3,000 attend, and that has international decision makers, distributors from 32 countries around the world, as an example for the last one held in May.
Okay. All right. I mean, just turning to the conditions at the moment, are you seeing an impact of the fuel crisis on tourism numbers to Australia?
Yeah, in terms of data, we have a data lag in terms of arrivals. Data ABS we have is to March at the moment, which is obviously the conflict started at the end of February. So the data we have from that was overall positive, actually, in terms of that March for the 12 months. It was 8% up in terms of arrivals into Australia. All of our markets were up in terms of those, except for Vietnam, which was a little bit down, but they'd been on a massive increase in the last 5 years. So that's a watching brief for us. Obviously, there was the initial impact that happened and flight disruptions, and we focus on the UK and continental Europe as markets, and a lot of them will transit through the Middle East with those big carriers coming in. So that one we're watching closely. But we also...
But we don't have much beyond March yet, do we?
Not beyond March, no. But one element we do look at is forward aviation stats. So looking at what are the forward bookings in the next 6 months compared to that same 6 months in the previous year. And for that, pleasingly, Asia, across Asia, they're 8% ahead in terms of bookings for that. But not unexpected, the UK, Europe is actually down 14% over that 6 months. Again, attributing that to those Middle Eastern carriers and the disruption they've faced around that. But for us, the work we do, we're playing a long game with our activity. You know, Australia as a destination is a high purchase cost for many of our markets. The lead time of booking is long. You know, you're talking 9-12 months ahead of time. So we need to keep our activity and our momentum up in all our markets. Okay. We also invest in additional research with our industry. We've increased the cadence of our industry communication. We have a fortnightly webinar that we run to give our industry an update on the Middle East, what's happening. We get our regional general managers from around the world on that to talk about their experience and what's happening from that. We also, there's some domestic, we don't work on the domestic side, but some domestic research that has been made available shows that, in fact, Australians are now more likely to travel within their own state territory and look less at a longer haul break at this situation, which could be a benefit in the short to medium term here. And one of the last point I'll probably make is we look at consumer confidence in our international markets. So in the 16 markets around the world, we assess, with the current situation, what is your appetite to be considering a leisure overseas holiday? And pleasingly, from March, the March data we had to April, that moved from 50% having confidence of travelling to 59%. Some of our markets are a lot higher. The only market that had dropped, actually, of those 16 is New Zealand. But somewhere like China had jumped up from 69% confidence to 76% confidence in travelling. So these are the kind of data that we gather because it informs our strategy and our choices about, because we're being very agile with our plans at the moment to make sure we're investing in the right spaces. So,
okay. Yeah. All right. Are you adjusting any of your campaigns from the fuel crisis, adjusting where they should be targeted, or
Yes,
how you're pitching it in this elevated
question.
fuel price environment?
It's a good question, Senator, and we are looking at, as I said, long game in a lot of our markets and our activity. You can't take your foot off the pedal in terms of being out there and keeping Australia top of mind in those 16 markets, so that is a focus for us. But we're being agile in the type of activity that we do and increasing where we see there's opportunities. For example, we focus on leisure and business events, getting people across for incentives and conferences, and that's an area where we've increased our marketing across Asia particularly, and North America, to keep top of mind with those consumers and those decision makers for business events, to make sure they know that we are here and open to discuss potential events and incentives choosing Australia. We also have a campaign called Come and Say Good Day. Now, that launched a few years ago, and Chapter 2 launched in August last year, and that is an invitation to the world to come and say good day and visit Australia. And we test that heavily with market research. It's in the top 1% of advertisements in travel in this category around the world. And there is no better invitation and sentiment right now to put out there that Australia is here to welcome visitors from around the world. One of the key drivers for destination choice is a rational one of safety and security. And with that, we're blessed as a destination, and our brand that we are known as one of the safest destinations in the world to go to, we're up there. And when we survey customers after they've been, they rate us even higher than that. And the great thing that we're seeing in the research we're getting right now is we're seeing an increase in safety and security perception of Australia. That's gone even higher than it had been. So we're regarded as that, and we know the demand is there, maybe to a lesser degree in some of the markets, going back to that consumer confidence. But for us, we have to keep chasing those international visitors for our industry because they're so high yielding and lucrative for our visitor economy.
Okay. Have you noticed any impact? I don't know how much you do this, given your focus on international tourism, but once people get here, have you noticed an impact on their propensity to travel to the regions or remote areas, given the cost of fuel?
It's a good question. Overall, I don't have any data specific to that since the conflict started. But our act and our purpose at Tourism Australia is to get people here and get them moving around. So dispersal is a key part of what we focus on. In fact, across our marketing activity, 2/3 of what we put out there in our campaigns features regional destinations. That Aussie Specialist program I mentioned that trains those 40,000 travel agents around the world, that heavily features on itinerary building and pushing dispersal and making sure they get out in the regions. We host international media that come to Australia every year. In fact, so far this financial year, we've had, I think it's about 14,000 articles that have come out worth an equivalent of over 800 million in economic equivalent advertising value. All of those will be coming in, and they'll be having some kind of type of regional experience.
You sponsor them, or?
We often will fund travel to get them to come across, but we heavily vet who we support to come across, looking at their publication, looking at their reach, looking at their fit with our brand, and most importantly, does their reach fit with the high-yielding traveller that we're trying to target?
Are you doing anything with social media influencers?
We do. We work with social media influencers, but again, the same with anyone we support and work with. It's heavily vetted in terms of who we support and how we do that. One example, actually, we just did a new event this year called Good Day Stories, which was held in South Australia. That brought 38 media and influencers, content creators from around the world. They went to South Australia and we held a wonderful event there, but then they went on 50 what we call educational familiarisations around the country to experience it. And that has already, and my colleague might confirm the number for me while I'm talking, I think it's in the region of over 80 million that we've had in equivalent advertising value just from that particular event. Okay. But heavily vetted and making sure we're getting only the best and reaching the best with what we do.
Right. Okay.
And your original question was about that domestic and what we're seeing, and it's probably worth referencing from a dispersal point of view. In this moment, from our social channels, we have more followers, fans across the Tourism Australia social channels than any destination anywhere in the world. We just reached a milestone of 20 million. So we utilise that audience, and that includes Aussies as well, so there's a domestic halo effect of that. But we're utilising that audience in this moment, knowing and recognising that some of our regions in particular are hurting right now. So we have created a new series on our social channels called Unhurried Australia, which puts a spotlight, as I say, on those. We just did a great feature on Far North Queensland as an example, and make sure that people know about that. And we followed that up with something we call a hot list, where we put out to 10,000 media and distributors around the world, and we're doing a special regional feature to push that through. And actually, just to correct myself in terms of that Good Day Stories one, the reach was 90 million that we've had from Good Day Stories, and the equivalent advertising value to date, because it's still ongoing, has been 53 million. So we're really happy with the result we got from that.
So you have more followers than any other tourism promotion?
Yes.
Who are you comparing yourself with? Similar bodies to Tourism Australia in other countries?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, you got more than USA?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, okay, all right. The Kiwis do pretty well on this stuff too, don't they? But you beat them too?
We do, Senator.
All right, okay, that's good. Are you working with this regional issue? I've spoken to many tourism operators in regional areas. They're doing it pretty tough at the moment. And a lot of this is because of Australians not travelling around some of these remote areas, people in caravans and the like. But do you work with the state bodies or regional tourism organisations to help in these areas?
Senator, we work really closely with our state tourism bodies and the regional authorities around the country. In fact, we speak regularly. We have forums. We have different strategic sharing sessions. But since the Middle East conflict started, we have a fortnightly catch-up with myself and the CEOs of every state and territory. We have a great working relationship with them. We share insights. But for us, as I mentioned, we already do a lot. We're a big focus on dispersal, but we looked at what we could do more. That social series, that hot list that I talked about, that we push regional focus. We have a dedicated hub on australia.com, our consumer-facing website, and also increasing actually activity on that Aussie Specialist program. So we share all of these insights with our state and territory tourism partners and look where we can add incremental value to the great work that they do as well.
Okay. Have you briefed the Minister on the impact of the crisis on regional tourism?
We're continually feeding information back to our Minister and Minister's office in terms of industry insights that we're hearing. And in fact, with our sister agency, Austrade, we hold regular stakeholder forums where every association attends that. The Minister's office are there as well, and they hear firsthand feedback from around.
Since the beginning of the Middle East conflict in late February, how many times have you met with the Minister?
In terms of that, I would say, I think I'll take that on notice for a specific number.
Have you met with the Minister since late February?
Since February. I'm trying to think when the last estimates was, because the Minister wasn't here for that one. Yeah, I'll take it on notice, Senator.
When you say estimates, so you might have met him during the estimates period. Often you get briefings about estimates as a Minister, but outside of estimates, when's the last time you met the Minister?
That would be, I'm trying to think of an overseas trip. It would have been in February. I saw him in February, late February, early March.
This year?
In the US, yes. Yeah, we did round tables and actually had a really great visit to the US part of it.
Did you brief the Minister there, though? Was that just an event?
No. Lots of meetings happened there, and I've actually got one scheduled for next week.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear. Okay. Right. That might be it on the regional tourism. Oh, yes, just there now.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, Senator. Yes. Can I correct myself there? We had a tourism ministers meeting that I also had a meeting and sat with our minister and a catch-up with him there, and that was in March, I believe.
Okay. Yes, there was. There was a. So that was that.
Yeah. Apologies.
A communique came out about that. Not much action, but okay. At least things were discussed. The passenger movement charge. Were you consulted about those changes in the budget?
That's not something that we were consulted on, Senator. No.
Have you expressed any concerns to the Minister or the government about the changes and what impact on tourism?
From our side, I know the associations have been quite vocal in their views on that, and from us, we feed back what we hear from industry. From our side, in terms of passenger movement charge, it's the barriers to choosing a holiday to Australia are time, distance, and cost. And that's something we're ubiquitous to our work we do. The average spend for an international visitor coming to Australia is $5,600 a head. So this increase...
Does that include their flights? Or?
It does, Senator, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the average. Some markets are a lot higher than that.
It'd be about yeah, go for it. Yep.
I have an interest question. The UK's changed their rules for their dual citizens have to travel back on a British passport now. How does that affect your counting when people come here, if they're coming back on a British passport when they're Australians? How do we know the difference?
It's a good question, Senator. It's probably one more for the Department of Home Affairs than
But
myself.
they give you those numbers?
In terms of, we get the ABS statistics, so that looks at arrivals coming in by origin, so where they're from. So I'm assuming that would come into those numbers, but it's probably a question, as I say, for Department of Home Affairs specifically. But
sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Just checking, do you provide any advice or have a position on the potential for a digital incoming passenger card?
It's not an area that we would focus on in terms of giving advice on that, no, Senator.
Okay. Because we'd be one of the few countries left relying on a printed card, is that right?
I believe so, Senator, yes.
Right, okay. Is that something that comes up at times in your consultations with industry, something they'd like to see?
We've heard this from associations, yes, in terms of that border modernisation. It has come through in terms of feedback, yeah.
Okay, but you don't have a role in that? That's a matter for
we don't.
Border Force? Or?
Yes, I believe it would be.
Okay. I mean, with that, I meant to ask actually before this increase in the passenger movement charges, raising over $700 million. Is any of that coming back to yourself to help promote tourism?
It's not, Senator.
Right. But there will be an impact on it, given the cost. None of it has been earmarked to help offset that cost?
In terms of, we have appropriation from the government in terms of that budget outline I gave earlier.
Okay. There's in your PBS, there seems to be a reduction or an expected reduction in the amount of business events occurring in Australia from 4.7 billion in 25-26 to 3.9 to 4.2 billion next coming year. What explains that potential reduction?
It's a good question, and one that we've been digging into, because we have obviously KPIs that look at where the areas that we focus on, leisure and business events, and business events are very high yielding in terms of what they deliver. And for us, in terms of that KPI, you're spot on that that has reduced. In fact, the latest number, as you said, is 3.9 billion. 3.96, just shy of 4 billion, so still a huge amount it delivers to the industry. When we dig into the data, because we've been looking at why there's, because when I speak to the convention bureaus around the country and our convention centres, they are seeing great benefits from international and great events being one, and we know that from our bid fund in terms of the events that are coming through. The drop in revenue, we believe, is linked to those smaller events and meetings that form part of that bigger data pool, and that might be people who are travelling less and putting more on Zoom and Teams meetings as opposed to coming across. But we believe there is a healthy pipeline of the ones that we focus on, which is those larger incentive groups and conferences coming in, which is heavily supported by our bid fund program.
Okay. Okay. How do you track that? How do you get that information?
So that comes from the International Visitor Survey. So that's from Tourism Research Australia under Austrade. They provide us with that data.
Okay, okay.
And then industry we speak to regularly, convention centres and bureaus, to get their data and insights from them as well.
All right. So it's not a lack of venues or infrastructure that we have in this country for business events?
That's not feedback I've had, no, in terms of that. I think we always look for growth and pipeline of that. I think in an example we've had is the Cairns Convention Centre up there, which had 166 million invested in the last few years and has a beautiful new convention centre. So Tourism Australia and our dedicated team, Business Events Australia, we love those coming through because it's new stories that we can focus on, that we have coming through.
Okay. Just going back to some of these funding reductions, there also seems to be a funding fall for the Grow Demand program. What's being reduced there?
Sorry, Senator, can you repeat the question?
The Grow Demand funding. So from your PBS, it looks like Grow Demand funding falls from 164 million to 154.782.
I think the Grow Demand is our overall priority that we have under our budget, our appropriation. So that's those figures I was reporting.
Oh, so we've already covered those in a way, have we?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Are you doing anything yet to promote or plan for Brisbane 2032?
That's a great question, and it's a great opportunity for Australia and Queensland from that. For us, we're working very closely with the Brisbane 2032 Olympics Paralympics Committee and Tourism Events Queensland, and looking at where we can add incremental value at Tourism Australia perspective, and really analysing where we think we can make a difference. We're already looking at plans in the pipeline up to 2032. We actually have a bigger priority as an agency to celebrate major events, and we call it the Decade of Green and Gold, up to and beyond 2032. So an example of that is Rugby World Cup in 2027, which is going to bring great numbers, we believe, just like the British and Irish Lions did last year. So we're excited about that. But on the Olympics part, yes, we're looking at what the opportunity is. And the first piece that we're looking at is the 2028 handover in LA. So where we can leverage that moment and have very clear stakeholder engagement lanes that we operate in, as I say, to make sure we're not duplicating effort from any other party, but making sure we're going to add value through this process. But it's a great opportunity. We're very, very excited about it.
And so will your role be, I suppose, not just promoting the event or leveraging off that, but also this dispersal issue?
Yes, Senator. Everything we do is the whole of Australia. So we look at that, and we're a marketing agency. So our job ultimately, and in fact our big strategy of what we do around those events like Rugby World Cup, is when the eyes of the world are on Australia, we make sure that in the living room, on the device, in our key markets around the world, we're putting the visuals up to get them to not just watch, but take the next step and plan and book a trip to Australia or hosting an event here as well. So it's a great opportunity because anything that puts the spotlight on Australia gives us the opportunity to leverage that.
Yeah, go for it.
So do you get any involvement in the handover? I know there's a ceremony. Do you get to have a chat to someone about this?
That's conversations we're having in terms of working with how that's going to operate and early stages on that, but we'll certainly have an opinion and can share that and look at where we can leverage that moment. But I think that probably sits more with the Brisbane 2032
I knew it would sit there,
group.
but having those conversations, because you always watch the handover and you go, that's where it's going.
Yes, exactly. And again, it's looking at how we can add incremental value to what they do, because we have great relationships with the CEO, the CMO there, and make sure that we can leverage that.
And I'm sure Senator Canavan's too, non-biased to say this, but you're planning on keeping people up to Rocky to watch the rowing?
I was about to get to Rocky, not that connection. Yeah.
Questions.
Well, don't forget, Reid, I think the Queensland Government is doing a great job in moving events around Queensland as well, not just in Brisbane. So I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yes,
and
fully aware,
it gives you a
Senator.
chance to promote that dispersal. But on that, on Rockhampton, have you ever done anything with...
Buckle in, kids.
I won't be too long, guys. Have you ever done anything with Beef Week?
Late for that.
Say again, sorry?
Have you ever done anything with Beef Week?
Beef Week?
You know what that is? All right, we need to
Rockhampton is one of the
educate
two greatest beef weeks in Australia.
It's the greatest, but it's every 3 years in Rockhampton.
Okay.
It would be, I would suggest, one of the largest industry-oriented events in terms of attracting overseas visitors.
Right.
It started as primarily a domestic event, but it has grown considerably to bring in people from the beef industry, from the US, from Brazil, our customers as well, in Asia primarily. Massive event in Rockhampton, which is generally known as the beef capital, despite my New South Wales senators interjections. So yeah, it would be great for you to have a look at that.
Yeah,
it's attracting a lot of international visitation. It's on next year, every 3 years.
Right.
So
Thank you, Senator.
May next year.
It's probably more linked to Austrade in terms of what they do from connecting in with those industry sectors.
Sure.
But it's certainly something we'll look at.
Mad. It's absolutely mad. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yes.
it'd be worth having a look at, I'd say. I might put you in touch with...
Tap into the Yellowstone vibe going on in the world
yeah,
right now.
that's right. It does tap into all of our heritage and history around beef and stockmen, all that sort of stuff. And that might be it. I thought I had another segue off that, but Ross has sent me off in a different direction. But anyway, all right, we might leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Canavan. Always a good night to end on Beef Week. A very good event, and you do need to book well in advance accommodation. So if anyone's watching or listening,
premium, no doubt.
make sure you book in well in advance. All right, on that note, good evening, everyone. That does conclude today's examination of the 2026-27 budget estimates. I do want to thank Minister Ayres and Minister Wong, who are here representing Minister Farrell, who no doubt is doing great work overseas, representing Australia with our many fantastic trade deals. Also want to thank Mr Mina and many officers of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, including our wonderful agencies. All witnesses who have given evidence today, thank you for coming. Thanks again to Hansard, Broadcasting and the Secretariat. And on that note, I'm happy to declare that the hearing is now adjourned. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.